In episode number 383 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the new Morbius teaser trailer.
We also have this year's BROSCAR Nominations, and will your favorite films end up winning?
And our comic book highlight this week, as picked by our listeners, Venom: The End, number 1.
All of this and so much more on today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am your almighty Emperor Kelli.
And I am Skier Daniel.
Skier? Have you ever been skiing in your life?
No, that's a white people thing. I'm going to be slightly racist there. It's not even slightly, is it? I mean, it's blatantly.
I've never been skiing either, so...
You have.
I have not been
Look at your skin tone.
I have not been skiing. I'm not a rich white people.
I've been sledding in Illinois. I've almost stood on a sled. That's like the equivalent of Mexican skiing.
That's snowboarding. That's snowboarding.
Not on those cheap ass plastic saucers.
It's definitely not skiing. So for those of you joining us for the very first time, the way we format the show is we're going to cover some news. We have our Patreon shout-outs, our comic book highlight, and we wrap it up with the Bro Cat block, which is what happened with Daniel and I this week.
Starting things off with some video game news and some as I saw on Twitter, angry virgins immediately. Because Byleth, the renowned mercenary and professor from the Fire Emblem series, is the latest fighter to join Smash Bros. Ultimate's DLC pass, and the internet is fucking pissed off. All these gamers are very angry.
So what I gathered is they're angry because it's another Fire Emblem character instead of Cory in the House, instead of Goku.
Look, Cory in the House is a better option than every Fire Emblem character.
But let me ask you this. If it was a Fire Emblem character with giant boobs, would they still be angry?
Well, there is a female side of that character, but I don't know.
But does she have giant boobs?
Not really. No. Not by their standards.
Okay, then.
I don't think they'd be as angry, so that probably would have been the solution for Nintendo to release one of the giant-tittied Fire Emblem characters, and they did not make the right move
They didn't, clearly.
Some people are saying, just make a Fire Emblem fighting game already then, and I'm like, well, this is kind of it, and I, as a Fire Emblem fan, am very happy, very satisfied. I'm not a purchaser of DLC for Smash Brothers, not because I don't believe in the product, not because it's another Fire Emblem pass, but I don't play Smash Brothers anymore. I don't play video games. I don't do any... It's one of the hobbies I don't play anymore. So to me, the DLC pass is just a comedic thing for me where I can just laugh at the gamers that are angry, yet I can be happy for my ass who's not playing the games, who will celebrate more Fire Emblem content in the world, who would be fully happy with an entire cast of Fire Emblem characters in Smash.
You're just happy because you don't have to spend the money because you're not playing it right now.
That's not even an issue. The money thing, it's fine with. It's not a bad price for the fighters. And while I'm sad that I can't play the game, I'm happy at one, the nerd rage of all of this, because it's yet quote unquote another Fire Emblem. But two, it'd be like them filling this thing with Pokemon or Star Fox characters. Fire Emblem is another pillar in my gaming that I love. So I'm seeing more of the things that I enjoy. So to me, not an issue, and I'm not able to look at it as a non-Fire Emblem fan. I just look at it as, this is great DLC.
This latest pass has 6 more characters on the way. They're currently under development. I'm sure people will be angry when they're released as well.
I hope there's another Fire Emblem character in there.
I hope there's 6 more Fire Emblem characters in there.
I hope it's the same Fire Emblem character 6 more times.
And I hope they're angry, but they buy it anyway.
Well, they're stuck with this shit. Hell yeah. It's a fighter pass. They have to buy it. And they're going to buy it. Because they want to fight. They want to complete their roster. So as much as they're complaining and whining, it is not costing them any season passes.
While people are angry about their video game characters, on the movie side of things, people are actually not angry, I think, for once. But we did finally see the Morbius teaser trailer release, which is starring Jared Leto.
Michael Morbius. Got tired of doing the whole good guy thing, huh? What's up, Doc?
Morbius is set to release this summer on July 31st from Sony, so it is one of the Marvel Sony film rights that they do own along with Venom, the rest of the Venomverse, Black Cat, Silver Sable, all of those. So certain people are complaining that it's not an a big enough character in their eyes to make a movie out of. Put aside the fact that it's Jared Leto, a massive name not only in music but also in movies, recently did the Joker in Suicide Squad, which we enjoyed and are still fighting for. I think the campaign is going to begin probably in the next year or so for David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. But this is also a movie that marks a production that Disney, Lord Feige would never greenlight. It is a supernatural horror comic book film. And I think it's PG-13 on this one, but even so, it's not something that you're gonna see in the MCU, in spite of the fact that this is in fact connected to the MCU because of the big reveal at the very end of the trailer. We saw Michael Keaton's Vulture show up, which connects the two universes.
Right. Oh, that was the best part of the trailer. I was like, oh, Michael Keaton, he's back. But yes, definitely a much darker tone throughout the whole thing. I was like, ooh, spooky, scary people.
Did you care at all about the character, what his story was, this disease that he's going through?
No, because, yeah, I guess a little bit. I just don't know anything about Morbius. So I'm hoping throughout the movie, and I have a little more hope that they'll maybe make us care for this character. But essentially in the trailer, he has this disease that's slowly killing him that he's trying to cure. So he's like, it's always worth trying to find a cure, essentially, until the cure becomes worse than the disease. And that's essentially like the point of the movie, right? The story, the message behind the story. And so then he goes and finds dark magic and turns himself into a vampire, essentially.
Since we know that this is gonna be Mr. Stark Spider-Man in it, which is the worst version of Spider-Man that we've gotten on the big screen ever, I have a little bit of faith that under Sony handling Spider-Man, since he will show up in this, I don't know how big a role it'll be, maybe it's just a post-credits cameo, maybe they're just setting up the Sinister Six for a future Spider-Man movie. But if Tom Holland does end up showing up here, I have a little bit of hope that we'll get him somewhat proper in this under a studio that clearly knows how to handle the Spider-Man characters, as we saw in the Raimi trilogy, we saw with Venom last year, 2 years ago, we saw it with Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, less than 2 years ago as well. We saw it with Amazing Spider-Man as well, the 2 movies on that. And I think the only dark spot, I guess, was Spider-Man 3, and some people say ASM 2, but if you look at the wide range of movies they've given us, not even including the TV shows of Spider-Man, they have a good grasp on this character. So I'm a little bit like, all right, maybe I can handle Tom Holland Spider-Man for a few minutes if he shows up under a Sony banner movie.
Is this something that you will be going to the theater to see? I won't say rushing, because I know you're not rushing to the theater, but definitely something that's on your list to check out when it releases. Yeah,
Jared Leto is a really good actor, and I like what Sony's been doing, again, with the comic book movies, so I will be there opening weekend, absolutely, and it's something that I think we should talk about on the show, and I hope that you also want to see it. You like Jared Leto too, right?
I do. I liked him as the Joker. I thought he was a fine Joker. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else, but of course, I'm your movie buddy. I'm happy to go with you.
American Psycho, he got killed by Batman himself.
I watched that movie like 10 years ago.
Oh, you need to rewatch it.
I remember Batman killing people, but don't remember him.
We're going to watch that now. We're going to see that this week.
Okay.
The rest of the news today is a huge chunk of DC Comics, comic books, and it all kicks off with the HBO Max conference through Variety, in which they announced that a 3-part limited animated Aquaman series is coming exclusively to HBO Max.
Variety's description of the series reads, quote, King of Atlantis will begin with Aquaman's first day on the job as King of Atlantis. Luckily, he has 2 royal advisors to back him up, Volko the scholar and Mera the water-controlling warrior princess, end quote.
It has not been confirmed if Jason Momoa or others from the film will reprise their roles, but Aquaman director James Wan will serve as an executive producer, so I think it's safe to say that it'll most likely have the same aesthetic as the movie, especially with the plot of his first day on the job, which is more or less where the film ended.
So is this supposed to be like a direct continuation of the film?
Again, they didn't really confirm it one way or the other, but I'm only saying that because James Wan is at all involved in this, I think it is. I think it is going to be an official continuation of it, as much as Green Lantern Emerald Knights was maybe Gotham Knights was a prequel to The Dark Knight. I think it's going to be loose enough to it won't affect whatever James Wan wants to do with the sequel,
right,
but enough for fans of that movie, that billion-dollar movie, to go, yeah, that looks like something I want to watch. It's a 3-part limited series. It's giving value to my HBO Max subscription.
It sounds really interesting. Definitely something that I would want to check out, seeing as how it's on HBO. You know, it's probably going to be a little more adult than if they make it on anything else, right? Because again, it's that HBO, you're expecting that HBO quality.
I'm not convinced it'll be any more than PG-13 because Aquaman wasn't an R-rated movie, and I don't think that Warner Brothers wants to muddy that up if it ends up being an adaptation of the movie.
I'm not saying R-rated, but the PG-13 themes are potentially going to be more adult than they would be otherwise. You don't think there's going to be a scene with him and Mara sneaking off to do whatever?
It's possible. I don't know what they're going to do with Aquaman 2 even, or if their relationship is going to develop more by the time we get Aquaman 2. No idea. I think it's more of them trying to brand build, not something I am going to also immediately watch because we're going to get HBO Max next month. When it hits there, I don't know if I'm going to watch it week 1. I thought Aquaman was all right, but I also didn't buy it. It's not something that I saw when I need to own this movie. So to me, this is just, if the animation is interesting and cool, great. I know they haven't been the best with their DC animated properties over the last couple of years, so I'm not really holding my breath on this one, but it's cool to see that they're at least catering to that $1 billion audience that clearly is there and wants more Aquaman content.
While they're not really clear, of course, if this directly relates or continuation of the movie, some have brought up what this means for the future of the DC Universe, to which chief content creator Kevin Riley had this to say to The Hollywood Reporter.
Quote, "We're working out what those mechanics are. We have to figure out those 2 subscriptions, and we haven't worked out the mechanics of what that's going to look like," end quote. So a lot of uncertainty as to, does this mean that year 3 of the DC Universe subscription service is going to be somehow tied into HBO Max, or if it's something that they get rid of altogether?
That'd be crazy. Can you imagine if they announced they're merging and then your 2 subscriptions, you got them even cheaper?
That's what a lot of people are saying, that they need to work out some kind of co-subscription model between the two, but that's all going to depend on how many subscribers they actually have right now on DC Universe. If it's a substantial amount, then yes, I think they will tie in this much more a month and you get HBO Max. But if it's not, I see them a year or 2 from now just merging the 2 services together.
That could flip on the opposite side, though, is say, okay, for $5 extra a month, if you have HBO Max, you could get DC Universe and up those numbers if they're not where they want them to be.
The only problem is that right now they did announce other HBO Max exclusive DC shows that are not going to be on DC Universe, and these are the Untitled Green Lantern Show, Strange Adventures, DC Superhero High, and DMZ. And we also heard that Stargirl was going to also air on CW, first show up on DC Universe and then go on CW. So it seems like DC Universe's service is less of a priority when it comes to these shows and projects now.
What's DMZ?
That's a Vertigo title, kind of like DC Black Label, I guess,
okay.
but non-DC characters, if that it was their indie imprint that they put up. Sandman and other Baghdad, Pride of Baghdad was under that same banner, so it's another one of those. It was a pretty big comic book series, and I think once if this takes off, it'll be another one that we can move the books for, and hopefully the show does well. But back to the topic, these DC Universe shows that aren't going to be on DC Universe, I don't know. I'm thinking more that it's not going to be that platform for DC exclusive shows. DC Universe won't be, at least. It's awesome for the animated shows that we're getting, the older ones, like the Timverse and the Unlimited comic books that some people use for. But all of these, I would have liked to have seen Green Lantern as an exclusive on my DC Universe service. And the fact that they're announcing these now, they probably won't show up till next year, which is right around the time, November of this year, is, I believe, this time 2 years ago when they launched DC Universe. So it's right around that time where if they decide to merge the services or get rid of DC Universe, it's going to be winter of this year.
It's unfortunate that it seems that DC Universe didn't take off as well as we would have liked to, because I still think it's a really, really great service. But I do commend them for saying, okay, if this isn't really working, what else can we focus on? And if it's exactly like you said, DC Universe becomes a place to read comic books and to watch the old shows, then great, like continue pushing that if that's what's really working for them. And then because of this relationship with HBO Max or whatever, we can move forward there with the original content.
I think the biggest thing that went against DC Universe is the fact that it wasn't on PlayStation, Xbox, every Roku device, or smart TVs. And that was an unfortunate thing, because from even now on Twitter, people are asking for DC Universe on their gaming consoles and outside of the US. A lot of countries haven't gotten DC Universe and they're asking for it. So I don't know if this had taken off a lot easier or stronger, then we probably would have had an expansion of markets and different platforms. But since we're not getting that outreach, that has me a little bit worried.
But you did kind of coast over one show when you were listing all those, and we should probably talk about it a little bit more. During the HBO Max presentation at the Television Critics Association press tour, WB teased the untitled Green Lantern series.
We talked about this a few weeks back with Berlanti being one of the head guys on it, and he worked on the CW shows, which I was saying that I don't want this to be CW's Green Lantern, because a lot of those shows we stopped watching a few seasons, 1 or 2 seasons into that show. I think Flash might have been the longest at 3 seasons. Constantine, they made him a CW character, which was very different than what we enjoyed from his own solo series. Here he is interacting with all these CW characters. He's transforming a cat into a person or transferring back into a person. So, of course, they have the joke in there of her coughing up a hairball. A lot of bullshit that did not fit in the Constantine show, something that he was not known for with fans of that. Now, we're happy that they're using him again, but it's not really our Constantine, and we're happy that Matt Ryan is getting other projects under that Constantine character, but it's still the CW. So because of that, Berlanti being the head of this, and yes, it's under HBO Max, so maybe that means something else, yet at the same time, Stargirl, which was meant for DC Universe, is going to be on the CW, so now that tells me that that's going to be a CW-style show. It gets me less excited for these projects, including Green Lantern.
We do have a quote here from HBO Max head of original content, Sarah Aubrey, who says, quote, "It's going to span several decades and focus on 2 stories about Green Lanterns on Earth." End quote.
That immediately tells me Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart.
Yes. I hope it's not Kyle Rayner. Hate that guy.
We'll probably get him eventually. We'll get Kyle Rayner. We'll hopefully get, and this also tells me that the show is not going to be all spacefaring as I kind of wanted. So the budget is not going to be massive on this one. Otherwise, we'd get all kinds of special effects with the different aliens, and that could quickly bring up the costs of something like Green Lantern.
Especially if you got Guillermo del Toro to direct it.
Yeah, that project it'd be enough of a budget for maybe an episode. Aubrey did say that they're going to go into Sinestro's story, which is really awesome. Now, I do like Mark Strong's portrayal in that Green Lantern live-action movie, and I'm glad we're getting more Sinestro content, but again, I am nervous. I don't want this to be CW Sinestro. I don't want this to be a complete change from what we know, because the CW shows do not follow the comics. They're very different from what they did in the books, and that's not to say that they can't do it better, but they haven't. The pattern so far has been, if you do it the CW way, it's a crowd pleaser, and it's not really there for the comic fans.
I definitely think it's worth checking out an episode or 2 at least, just to see what they're doing and where it's going, and report on it and make our judgments from there.
A lot of CW talk, as we mentioned. This is a spoiler to the Crisis crossover. So just a heads up, this is your warning, but you've probably already seen the big cameo on Instagram and on Twitter. But to those that caught this crossover, Ezra Miller's Flash made an appearance alongside the CW Barry Allen.
That's crazy.
Did you watch the clip?
No. Tell me everything.
I don't know what it means for the DC Extended Universe, or some people were saying like Movie Bob was pissed off because he was saying that hopefully Final Crisis was somehow going to erase the DC Extended Universe, even though these two companies have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
The TV show side is a different department of Warner Brothers than the movie side, and people don't understand that. And this is, I think, the first crossover we've gotten between the current movies and the TV shows. A lot of people were very happy about this because this meant that to Warner Brothers, Zack Snyder's Flash is still relevant to them, or there's going to be a future with Ezra Miller as a Flash. We know this already because of that Flash film that we're getting in a few years, but at the time that they filmed this, we weren't sure what was going to happen with Ezra Miller. Were they going to recast him like they did? Not recast, but they got a new Batman in a whole new different type of non-DCEU movie with Matt Reeves as Batman, and what they were going to do with Ezra Miller. So some part of the fan base was happy with it. Again, confirmation for the future, right? I saw the clip. I thought it was fucking terrible. I thought the way they filmed the costume looked This is why something like Justice League doesn't look good on the big screen. This is why these characters don't look good on the big screen. This is how you can tell when the reshoots were in something like Justice League, and you compare it to someone who knows how to fucking shoot a movie, and you get the CW people to shoot Ezra Miller's Flash on the TV. Looks god-awful. Dialogue was fucking terrible. They were touching each other's costumes, and it was the CW humor, and then he disappears in TV effect style, and I'm like, where the fuck is the cosmic treadmill? Where's they were lazy in inputting this cameo to where they couldn't even try to emulate what we saw in the BVS visiting Bruce, and I thought it was terrible. I could do without it. I don't need it. I'm glad the DC fans, some of them are happy with it. This clip means nothing to me personally. I don't think this means we're getting Zack Snyder's, and some people have jumped that far, that this means that we're now getting his world back. I don't think it means any of that. And this just is a way of Warner Brothers saying, we're getting the Flash movie. We're still working with Ezra Miller. That is literally it. I don't think this either means that we're going to now see Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman show up in the CW. I know it opens the door for all of that. I don't care to see that, though. I'm not watching the CW. I don't care about the CW anymore. Those shows are simply not for me. And where do you stand on all of this?
I haven't seen the clip. I'm sure that it's as terrible as you say, of course. I don't need to see them in the CW either. In my mind, they're always alternate universes, and I can write off the Flash showing up because the Flash kind of does this thing, right? He has been seen in, of course, these alternate realities and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I can write it off as that, but please don't start putting everybody. And beyond that, you're not going to want to pay these stars to be in a TV show. That's why you don't cast the stars in these TV shows. Because, again, they're separate universes, but they're also separate paychecks.
Are you at all optimistic that this could be a platform for Warner Brothers to promote the DC movie characters to the TV viewers?
I guess, but again, I don't think you need to do that, and I don't think that's the right way to do that. Because all you're going to do is confuse them in their minds and say, oh, well, they were in this TV show, so these TV show characters must be a part of that universe.
I give people more credit than that. I don't think they're going to get confused at all about this. I do think they recognize that, oh, that's movie Flash now crossing over into CW Flash. It doesn't mean that they're now working together on the same. And that's because audiences they're familiar with this already. They thought early on, they didn't think the audiences would be able to grasp this concept. And I think we're far beyond into these stories to know that this is literally just another actor and another version of the same character, and that's okay. But again, I thought it was not serving any purpose to at least the projects that they set up on the big screen. I don't think it's necessarily a majorly positive thing. I don't know how much it's really hurting it either, so me not saying it's not for me and not liking it doesn't really mean a whole lot. I just don't think that it has the weight or the impact that people think it does.
Continuing on with some big screen movie news, it would not be an episode of The Reasons I'm Broke without an update on hashtag release the Snyder Cut.
Zack Snyder took to Vero to reveal another image of Uxas, aka early Darkseid.
Baby Darkseid.
Small Commander, or large Commander Darkseid, not
Baby Darkseid.
not Mr. Apocalypse. And during the history lesson with the caption, quote, Uxas clearing the defenders of Earth from the anti-life equation. He better look out for David Thewlis, end quote.
So who is Thewlis, you may ask? I
Who
ask.
is Thewlis?
Who is Thewlis? Thewlis portrayed Ares in Wonder Woman, was credited in Justice League, but wasn't actually in Justice League.
The person we saw in Justice League was Ares actor Nick McKinless, and that's the name we did not see in the Justice League credits, but we did see his face in Joey's cut of the film and in that very short history lesson. Unfortunately, the actor Nick McKinless, again, or if you want to call him the body double or stuntman, although he's saying, don't call me those things, there's a miscommunication between Zach and Nick, because he also took to Vero and put up this long text post saying not only was he not credited in Justice League, but that he has an issue with Zach straight up saying that he's not Ares in his cut of the film, that instead it's David Thewlis. He said that he's not a stuntman, he's not a body double, he is Ares. And this is where the two are kind of clashing, because Zach is saying, no, we meant to, this is what we're gathering from this, is that David Thewlis' face was going to be superimposed onto Nick McKinless's body, similar to what we saw in Wonder Woman when he had that buff body and you see, the actor's face on there. But he is under the impression that all of those scenes that he filmed, and you see his facial expressions as if that's how you do it. You play the part and then they end up messing with it. But he's under the impression that he himself was going to be Ares running around in these scenes in this longer history lesson, and Zach is saying it's not the case.
Do you think there was really a miscommunication, or do you think he's just building that up in his mind?
Building it up so that he gets more money, or where are you referring to here?
So do you think they were originally legitimately hey, so you're just going to be the body double and then we're going to put his face over yours? And then obviously they didn't do that. So then did he just make it in his mind oh, well, if Snyder had released it, then it always just would have been me?
I think Nick was legitimately confused about what his role was in all of this. And I think that by the time they removed Zack Snyder, which is when they were working on the post-production stuff, all of the, I'm guessing, mainly special effects. I know they talked about finishing the shots, the reshoots or whatever. Who knows what bullshit they fed us. I forgot what it was back when Joe Whedon was brought on. But in Nick's case, I do believe that the intention was probably to have David Thewlis, especially if he was credited in Joey Whedon's Justice League, then that means that the intention was always there for that David Thewlis portrayal to be in the film, even if they didn't end up using it in the movie. I do think it's shitty that he not only did not get credit in Joey Whedon's Justice League, because you clearly see it's his face and not David Thewlis, but then now he's not going to get it either. He will. I think it should say Ares, Nick McKinless / David Thewlis in Zack Snyder's cut of the movie, and I think that is going to be what we end up getting. But I think Nick and Zack need to speak directly and figure out and be clear about, I'm sorry, Nick, you are a body double, or not even a stuntman, but you are going to be the body to David Thewlis, and that's just what it's going to be. I don't know why Warner Brothers decided not to put David Thewlis in Joey Whedon's Justice League. Some people are saying that they wanted a younger Ares, or because it's a history lesson, they could have used a younger actor, but Zach, he's like, they're gods. He looks the same as what he looks like in Wonder Woman.
He's got a mustache forever.
That's right.
Weirdo mustache.
It's going to be great, and I can't wait to see that. So I think Nick is in the wrong on this one. I think it's going to be David Thewlis showing up in Zack Snyder's Justice League in the history lessons, in the dialogue that all these characters have. That's what it's going to be.
It seems that Zack is being much more vocal, even more so than he was, even a month ago, on answering fan questions, on posting these different screenshots, and really getting us excited for the potential that this year we will see his cut of the movie.
Per usual, when he posts up on Vero, he took the time to answer more fan questions. He encouraged the idea of Steppenwolf's original design being used for his cut. Someone asked him, are we now going to get your Steppenwolf in your cut? And he put up a fist emoji, which I think is a good sign. But when asked if the Flash pushing people and never having fought was in his cut of the scene, do you remember that? Because Batman's telling him, you need to go in there, you need to save people. And Flash says, I've never fought anyone. I just push people and I run away. And Batman tells him, save one, and then after that, you'll know what to do. And that's when he knows, okay, I need to save more and more people. But Zach responded to that scene with, what the fuck? So that was not in his cut of the movie.
Oh, I kind of liked that part. I thought it was just so very Flash. It was great. He was overcoming his fear of bugs to save people. I would have been scared too, the Flash.
I think if you liked it, that's fine. But I can't wait to see what his handling of the Flash would have been in that version. Instead of being someone who's afraid of never having fought anyone or pushing people, what does Zach's Flash do? And that's what I really want to see. And it could be a better version than him pushing people and running away. As comedic or charming or whatever that is, maybe this is the better thing. And I'm guessing it is, because I don't think there's anything in Joe Whedon's that's like, oh, that's really fucking good when you compare it to what we got in BVS or Man of Steel.
We still hold out hope to be able to see this movie. Like I said, this year. I think it'll be this year. You think it'll be this year?
I think it'll be this year, 2020.
I think it'll be this year. And it will hopefully far outweigh any of our expectations, much as another movie did. And not just our expectations, but I think the world's expectations. Now we are getting into Oscar season, and the Joker movie has nabbed 11 Academy Award nominations.
These include Best Picture, Actor in a Leading Role, Directing, Cinematography, Costume Design, Film Editing, Makeup and Hairstyling, Original Score, Sound Editing, Sound Mixing, and Writing.
Damn.
This makes it the most nominations for Warner Brothers this year. This is their big movie. And I think it has the most nominations out of, maybe 1917 has some of those, but it's definitely one of the films with the most nominations this year.
Absolutely. The other comic book movie that was nominated was Endgame for visual effects.
There is now a campaign from the MCU to push to get them to have Endgame not only nominated for Best Picture, but to win the Best Picture. No. They're so mad.
Oh my God.
They're bringing up the incel argument. They're bringing up this nonsense of, well, if this other movie was called Riddler, maybe that would have gotten nominated. They're talking about Uncut Gems and how that got snubbed. And they're bringing down the Joker to justify their own movie.
Their shitty movie.
Not making it up into... And Endgame is a fucking... I haven't seen it, but I guarantee you it's goddamn junk food. I guarantee you it's that theme park bullshit that Scorsese was talking about.
On my Facebook, anybody said, when they talk about this, right? They said, I enjoyed Endgame, but it shouldn't win an Oscar. So it's like, even the fans know that it shouldn't win an Oscar.
Good. Someone with half a sense.
Yeah.
You know, they're wrong about the... It's probably not... I don't know. Well, they didn't say it was a good movie, right?
They said they enjoyed it.
So that's fine. I enjoy bad movies too. It's insane how and it's hilarious to me. I think it's great. The meltdown that MCU Twitter had over all of these nominations that Joker had was fucking fantastic. And now they're the ones that have moved on from that are like, well, maybe it won't win that many. So it's like, it's gonna win at least one Oscar, and it's gonna be an achievement on the fact that it even won and got nominated for 11 goddamn Oscars. It's fucking fantastic. Good on the team behind Joker, and shame on you if you have not watched it.
We will find out February 9th what it actually wins, but due to all of its nominations, Warner Brothers has re-released the movie to over 750 more theaters.
During its initial run, Joker took in over $1 billion, making it the highest-grossing R-rated film of all time.
But still not in China.
So now you have a chance to watch Joker. No excuse. If you want to watch it on the big screen, watch it in theaters. If you want it at home, you can rent it, you can stream it, you can buy it on 4K, Blu-ray, DVD. Watch the Joker film.
We always encourage you, watch as many of these Oscar-nominated movies as you can. Sometimes you'll find one that you never would have thought of that's just absolutely fantastic.
We just, at least I watched The Two Popes last night. I've got two more that I'm going to watch, Bombshell And also, I'm going to check out Hustlers. And there's one more, Uncut Gems. Fuck it, I'll watch that.
You have fun. I have no desire to watch that movie.
We have some comic book news here from the retailing side, as 2019's Diamond Distributors list put Detective Comics number 1000 as the best-selling comic book of last year.
Amazing. Their list of top 5 include number 1, Detective Comics number 1000.
At number 2 is Spawn 300.
Number 3 is X-Men number 1.
At 4 is Black Cat 1.
And number 5 is Deceased number 1.
DC Comics also topped the charts in the graphic novel category, with the number 1 spot being Watchmen.
Number 2 spot was Saga Volume 1. Great job, Saga. Keep it going all these years later.
Good on you and Saga.
Yeah, love them. When they coming back next year?
At least a year and a half. At number 3 is Umbrella Academy Volume 1.
Number 4 is Monstrous Volume 1.
At number 5 is Tom King and Mitch Gerrard's Mr. Miracle Volume 1. I don't know if they're going to do more. I guess they're just calling it the Mr. Miracle Volume.
While Marvel still took a majority market share, DC improved compared to 2018. So still releasing those great stories, great titles, building much faster than Marvel. They'll top them one year.
This is what I was talking about when I talked about the graphic novel category and how I want stronger stories to stand the test of time. If you look at their top 100 graphic novels, it's all DC Comics, Image Comics, and other independent publishers. There's very few Marvel trade paperbacks because people are not going back, and I want to read Absolute Carnage. I haven't read Absolute Carnage, but let's say that's the latest. Absolute Carnage, I want to read that whole story 5 years from now. And
right.
I don't think they were putting out caliber stories that people are going to want to read in a decade. Every other publisher, though, they are. And this is why the charts look the way they do every single year.
And I think we will really continue to see that trend go the way that it is until Marvel really wises up and changes what they're doing to retain readers.
In spite of how well DC did on the graphic novels chart, on a Facebook question and answer video that they did, DC Comics publisher Dan DiDio hinted that the company is going to have to rethink trade paperbacks moving forward.
DiDio noted that collected editions with higher volume numbers on spines generally sell less.
So he's not referring to the Watchmen that was topping here, Mr. Miracle, or any of those. He's talking about the Detective Comics Volume 5, Volume 6, which those don't move at the rate that they used to even, 5 years ago. He said, quote, "We're finding diminishing returns on the books with numbering on spines. They take the same periodical cadence that comes with our regular books. Every subsequent number drops. The longer those numbers run, the lower and lower those print runs become," end quote.
I like that word. How'd you say it?
Subsequent.
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 So there's no word on what the company will do to change that. I really don't think that it's outside the realm of possibility that they stop printing those higher numbers. And no, you just got to find the original issues, which realistically for issues that high, that's not going to be that difficult.
One of the things that they were hinting at is going the route of what Marvel's doing now is instead of numbering each, they do 1 through 5, 6 through 11, 6 through 10, whatever, and they go forward, and those are each number. That way you can still catch up in order. Let's say you didn't collect issues 1 through 30, pick up the first 6 volumes, and then you can start reading the single issues, which some people do end up having to go that route. But what they want to instead do is what we're looking at is happening is they'll instead break it down by story arcs. So what Marvel does is instead of numbering the spines, they go, okay, Amazing Spider-Man, Absolute Carnage, and they put it out like that. Now, this is in turn pissing off the collectors because they're going, I'm reading these trades in order, so how am I supposed to figure out which one is the next one or which one I'm supposed to catch up on? Or when I put them on the shelf, do I put it in alphabetical order now? And it's going to look fucked up. So there's no right way on going about this. I'm almost thinking that the way they should go is not reprint these comics, the single issues, into trades, and instead do the big selling titles and reprint those into trades. So stuff like Dark Knight's Metal, or if there is a big arc in Justice League at some point, reprint that as a collected edition and instead no, don't worry about the issues 5 through 10 if it was just a filler arc or whatever. There's probably no need to reprint those in that case. But I'm not a publisher. I don't know what kind of effect that would have on the market, but I think that's, as of now, probably the logical point. Not the complete reprint Marvel run the way they're doing it, but instead be selective about what you collect.
You heard that first on The Reason I'm Broke by Daniel. If you steal it, then you owe us money.
You owe us money. That's funny. Didio also talked about the juggling of Doomsday Clock against the rest of the DC universe.
He said, quote, "A lot of what's on the timeline has been driven by story beats that came out. It is truly affecting the line in that fashion. It doesn't line up completely, but the sensibility, the purpose, the introduction of the JSA, the introduction of the Legion of Superheroes, those are key aspects of what the timeline is. Once you see it on paper, it all makes sense." End quote.
I don't think that's encouraging as far as what the impact of Doomsday Clock will have. And again, I don't need Doomsday Clock to change the DC universe forever, but I do need it to be a strong story, which it did end up being a really good story. But I know for a lot of readers out there, they wanted this to affect the DC universe moving forward, and I believe that was the original intention, and we saw that with the return of those Silver Age characters showing up in Doomsday Clock in that final issue. So we're getting some of that, but it was not built up quite to the size that I think they wanted.
I still want to flip back in like 10 years. So at the end of Doomsday Clock where they were saying like, it's 2040 and these are all the things happening. I want to be like, yeah, is that going to happen?
I hope it does. I hope it does.
We'll see. I did enjoy Doomsday Clock. I enjoyed some of the things that they set up at the very end of it because I was like keeping up with the timelines of the things that they were saying. So again, like you said, as long as it's a strong story, they could completely disregard what happened and whatever. Just give us a great story.
Finally, Didio addressed the delays with the DC Black Label line and how they are instead going to halt the production of these books.
He said, quote, "The response and reaction has been better than we could imagine. Our plan is to make sure we are consistent in the material we are putting out and that it's strong and it comes out on time. We will not be soliciting anything until we are clear that this material will come out as scheduled." End quote.
So this is not new for the DC Black Label line. A lot of these books have been plagued with delays, and Batman Damned, I think, was that first catalyst of it. We talked about that last week, how we don't know if it has to do with the creative team or editorial. We don't know behind the scenes what is happening. But the Didio did at least express that it's been a very successful line for him, that it's done incredibly well for comic shops especially, that Black Label line books are amazing. It does worry me that he's saying we're not going to put out any more of these new books, though, until we're making sure that they come out on time.
Do you think it would be a wiser move for them to continue to release these monthly as they were? Or, for an example, the Harleen book, rather than release them one at a time, wait until the story's finished and release the whole thing at once?
I think single issues is still the way to go because the sales are there. People subscribe to these books, and they're some of DC's best-selling books. I think it would be really dumb for DC to instead release them as trades or original graphic novels. This is the route to go. And him saying that they're not going to release these books until they know that they're going to be consistent with the material is an empty promise to me, because every book could always have some major change, especially if Black Label is going to be what it is, in that it's a creator-driven line where they're going to keep the same artist and the same writer for the rest of the series. Then the only thing that I would say they need to do, and I don't know if this is their intention or what they're going to do, is they need to make sure that the artist and the writer and that the books, the issues, 3 issues long, 5 issues, whatever miniseries it is, are fucking finished before they solicit that first issue. That's the only way that they're going to guarantee that this is going to be a consistent material for them. That's harder to do than what I'm simply putting out, though, because now you got to get, with all these writers, all these artists, have all this material finished ahead of time and then release in waves. How do you plan your next wave of DC Black Label books, though?
Right. Now
you're just saying, well, maybe you give them deadlines, and what if they don't finish them? Do you solicit the book anyway because you better have some Black Label book out there in the previews catalog? I don't know what the answer is, and this is why I say that it's an empty promise to put out of, we need to make sure that they're consistent first, because I don't think that's a doable thing. I think a lot of these books, especially if you're going to make them creator-driven, are going to have delays. Keep soliciting the books, keep releasing them out, and if they're delayed, then so be it.
It would be so difficult, too, to wait until it's completely finished, because then you don't have that opportunity to course correct a little bit as you write the next one. So that's something that I learned about recently with, for example, Netflix shows, right? It's already all created and, you're releasing the episodes and you can't change it based on response or where the market feels that it needs to go. Whereas with sitcoms, you notice sometimes they course correct a little bit right in the middle of the season and continue moving forward and nobody knows the difference. So that would be another drawback to waiting until it's completely finished. But I've also really enjoyed the Black Label books that we've picked up as they were, even with the Bat Penis.
I think the second half of 2020 will be a very interesting time for DC Comics, especially now that they're not really soliciting a lot of new number ones or new ongoing series. So I wouldn't be shocked if this 5G plan does take off this fall with a relaunch of new number ones. And before anyone bitches about, new number ones again, they don't do it as often as the other fucking publisher. They don't do it every goddamn 6 months like Marvel Comics does. It's been 5 years since DC Rebirth. And that's about that time that we get these relaunches. Maybe it's 2016, whatever. It's been almost 5 years. So we're about due for a new number one on a full line of books. I'm not saying that sales are so low that we need a new number one. I'm saying that if that is the plan, I don't want to hear any whining, and yet you don't complain when Marvel does their number ones, because they do it way more often than DC. And DC has, how many Marvel books have issue 50s out there? How many of those have it out there? And now they're going into legacy numbering with DC Comics. That's not the company to bitch at, especially when they're more retailer and consumer friendly than the others.
You were so angry. That came out of nowhere.
Because I know that's what we're going to hear when the 5G line comes out. Oh, new number ones again. It's been fucking years, guys. And you're going to get new number ones, and you're going to buy them, and they're going to keep doing them because you keep buying the number ones. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's going to continue. I don't know. I guess what pisses me off is when people will complain about it, yet then continue it going, like be that contributing factor to why they do it. So that's, I think, the frustration on my end.
And now our Patreon shout-outs.
Yeah, that is our news for the week.
Yes, that does wrap up our news for the week. We would love to hear your thoughts on Daniel's soapbox announcement. I'm
an angry skier today. Like, all this news is pissing me off. There's a lot of negativity in this news.
You know why you're an angry skier?
Why?
Because you don't have skis, you have a sled.
That's right, Mexican skiing. Patreon shout-outs of the week.
Our first shout out goes out to Scott, whose Twitter handle is @LazyGamingGuys or @Pandanime.
Scott had his own soapbox moment on Twitter. He put out like 5 or 6 tweets, a big thread, and outlined how Pokemon Sword and Shield does not require the DLC to complete the decks. So he was calling out these gamers that were getting upset at them charging for essentially completing the decks and saying, no, you don't need to buy any DLC to complete the Pokedex. All you have to do is trade with someone that has the Pokemon you need. So for example, they could have easily locked out all the new Pokemon or the National Dex Pokemon to people that did not buy the DLC. You don't have the DLC, then you can't trade that Pokemon with someone that has it. But instead they said, no, you can still get your Bulbasaur or your Charmander or whatever, even if you didn't buy the DLC, as long as you have someone to trade for it. And that was his whole thread outline of, it's going to take you longer, but that's what happens when you don't pay for the product.
Now, the only thing worth trading from that DLC is the Pikachu shirt. So can you trade that?
No, you do need to buy the DLC.
So then I have to buy the DLC.
You have to buy the DLC, but you're not trying to complete the decks, and that shirt is not a part of the Pokédex.
It should be. There should be a Dex of clothes.
Next shout out goes out to Jose on Instagram @KingdomT-shirt.
Thank you so much, Jose, for your Patreon support that helps continue the show and make it what it is.
Check out his Instagram at Kingdom T-shirt for some. Recently, he's been putting up a lot of Star Wars content.
Our next shout out goes out to at Innsmouth's Tide.
Yeah, no more underscore.
There's no, that tripped me up.
It.
I was like, you forgot the underscore in there. Oof, I was wrong.
He updated his Twitter handle. It is now just at Innsmouth Tide.
Innsmouth said, quote, Superman Red Sun lived up to the hype. Finally read it because of at reasons I'm broke, always ranting about it, end quote.
You're goddamn right. I knew he'd enjoy it.
He's always bitching. He's always just telling me to read it.
And I'm not wrong. Everyone will love this story. Even if you didn't, you're lying to yourself. You'll love it. Superman Red Sun. Amazing comics.
Next, we have Elizabeth, who is at EP Lifts.
Elizabeth said, quote, on Twitter, watching Aquaman again, and it's decided we need a 75-inch TV. Also, I still hate the cheap toilet bowl joke, end quote.
We all do.
Do you remember this scene?
I do.
Not a good one. And there's a lot of weird ones like when he smells himself underwater. I don't know. It's weird, but it is what it is.
I do support the 75-inch TV. Super Bowl's coming up. Great time to buy TVs.
Last shout out this week goes out to Joshua T on Instagram at JDTos.
Joshua accomplishes something that I never will, and that is baking a lot of bread in his free time. He posted a delicious-looking wheat loaf on his Instagram.
So huge thanks to Joshua, Elizabeth, Innsmouth Tide, Jose, and Scott for your Patreon support this week.
If you too would like to be a Patreon supporter, you can head over to patreon.com/thereasonsimebroke for $1 a month. That's only 25 cents an episode. You too can have your shout out.
And if you want to be heard on the podcast, you want to send us a question or a comment, link is in the description of today's episode. But otherwise, leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/thereasonsimebroke.
But that does wrap up our Patreon shoutouts, and we will now move into our comic book highlight of the week.
This week, we have the start of probably what's going to be the process moving forward, and this was an idea by Bobby on Twitter at Cuban Slim via our Discord lounge. We have a room in that lounge where it says Podcast Ideas Board, and on there he said, why don't you put up a poll on what book to review that week? And his original idea was to have, because I manage a comic book shop, I have access to all the books that I order for the store to be able to read them and go from there. The issue I had was that I'm not reading everything, you're not reading everything. So instead I said, why don't I put up a poll for the books that we pick up each week? And then from there, the Brokettes can choose which one gets reviewed. So what I did is I put up a poll for the DC polls and also one for the Indie and Marvel polls. And whichever one got the most votes is what we ended up reviewing this week. And by it was definitely a landslide on the Marvel side, but more votes went towards Venom The End, #1, which is a one-shot written by Adam Warren, art by Jeffrey Chamba Cruz, and colors by Guru EFX.
That is a perfect colorist name. It's perfect. What do you call this poll? Because it should
I don't have a name for it yet.
Patreon picks.
Well, the problem is it's not a Patreon exclusive. It's only on Twitter. And that reason is because there's no real easy way to do it either on Patreon.
I'll think of a name.
But this is the Brokette pick for the week, which is Venom The End. So a Marvel book. Not a bad one for us to review because we're not reading Marvel, but this is just a one-shot, a self-contained story, the last story of Venom.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
This wasn't for me.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
No, it really wasn't. It was very difficult to read. It was difficult to keep up with. There were like 1 million word bubbles, and a good portion of the story was also in the background and weird arrows, and I didn't really understand how Venom did all that he did and what happened to humanity and how he survived without really humans, but then he just I was very confused.
The basic outline of this one shot is that we're seeing the future history of the symbiote itself. So it gives us a little bit of the previous host that he's had, how Eddie Brock has been his favorite, but also how he's keeping organic life alive in the future. Not Eddie Brock anymore, because the human body only lasts so long.
Right.
In spite of Venom going in there and even replacing the neutrons in his brain so that he can continue living a little bit longer. And that's how much he liked Eddie Brock, that he wanted that to be his prime host and his only host. But he's still there to protect the future of life because the symbiote is a biological thing. And in this future, it seems like there's a mechanical Marvel race. I don't know if these are Marvel characters already. I'm not reading Marvel books, but they are now, we've seen the story before, where they're replacing all of the universe with synthetic life. And Venom is trying to build an army of hosts, and he's using DNA from all these different characters, heroes, villains, to superpower himself. At one point, he replicates himself into an army of Venoms just to keep these machines at bay. And as you mentioned, it's told from this perspective of time, yet time itself is not a character. Instead, it's the author, but the author is doing this terrible job of, wait, let me go back, or this is for effect. And why are you putting personality to what is a historical context of this comic? That didn't make sense. It wasn't good. It wasn't well written. The story itself had a neat idea of him being able to replicate these powers in the future for the future of humanity, and how he ends up sacrificing his whole being for the rebirth of the universe. There's some neat ideas there, but the execution, I think, was terrible.
I definitely agree with that. Really neat ideas, and if they had handled it differently, and I think it was just the narration that was so difficult to follow. If, it almost felt like they were trying to, I guess, almost speak like Deadpool, if I had to kind of put my thumb on it, or something like that, where if you were to listen to someone speak it or watch it on the big screen, it would have been humorous and really lent itself to that particular character that they've built. But you're asking a reader to read these made up words like Brockified or, Eddie-ness or whatever they wanted to say about Eddie Brock. And so you're asking the reader to try and translate that and keep up with your story. And it was just too much. Maybe if I really sat down and had half an hour to kind of dissect every single piece of this, it would make more sense. But, for someone who's an average reader who doesn't really follow these stories or these characters, it was just very difficult to immerse myself into.
Even the basic outline of the comic of not being traditional panels and it's trying to do this outer space thing, I don't think it worked. It had a shit ton of dialogue that I don't think served the story at all, and it was trying a little bit too hard to be grander than your basic dialogue by talking about the different neurons and the different aspects of space. And you're making a fucking Venom story. And I understand what the idea is behind it, and that doesn't at all mean you have to simplify it. But in an effort to try to make it grander than it is, when you're starting out the story of, wait, let's go back and have this story beat over here and saying shit like that, you're now doing 2, 3, 4, 5 different things that are not consistent with the story you're telling. And I've never heard of this team, and that could be maybe this creative team has an exclusivity with Marvel and they've been doing other Marvel books and I'm just not familiar with them, or these are the younger writers and artists that Marvel is picking up because they're cheap. And I can tell you for sure, when I read the other The End comic book that I got, Miles Morales, fucking awful. And it's another team that I wasn't familiar with. So I don't know if they're just putting their C/D bench on these one-shots, or if they're just happen to be 2 terrible stories that these people put out. But I say complete pass on Venom The End #1.
So that does wrap up our comic book highlight, and I think it was a pretty unanimous decision from both of us.
And this year, as we promised last week, we are doing the most important award show of the year. It is the 2020 BROSCAR Nominations.
So we are going to go through the nominations for each category. Won't go into any real detail, but of course we had to announce the nominations before we get to the actual award show. So first up we have visual effects, and the nominees are Ford v Ferrari, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Ad Astra, 1917, and The Irishman.
Congratulations to the nominees. Next category this year, we have cinematography. The nominees are Jaron Blaschke for The Lighthouse, Rodrigo Prieto for The Irishman, Lawrence Sher for Joker, Fedin Papamichael for Ford v Ferrari, and Roger Deakins for 1917.
You're a Papa Michael.
Oh, fine, you're the Papa Kelly, I'll be the Papa Michael.
It's perfect. Congratulations to those nominees in cinematography. Up next, we have animated feature. On the list, The Lion King, Missing Link, Toy Story 4, Klaus, and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World.
Congratulations to the nominees. Next category is Best Screenplay. The nominees are The Irishman, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Little Women, and The Two Popes.
Wonderful list. Next up, Best Supporting Actor. We have Joe Pesci from The Irishman, Margot Robbie from Bombshell, Willem Dafoe from The Lighthouse, Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Jennifer Lopez from Hustlers.
Joe Pesci, of course, played Russell Buffalino, Margot Robbie played Kayla Pospisil, Willem Dafoe played Thomas Wake, Brad Pitt played Cliff Booth, and Jennifer Lopez played Ramona Vega.
Congratulations to all those nominees for Supporting Actor.
Next category is Leading Actor. Your nominees this year are Renee Zellweger, who played Judy Garland in Judy, Christian Bale as Ken Miles in Ford vs. Ferrari, Charlize Theron as Megyn Kelly in Bombshell, Joaquin Phoenix, who played Joker, and Leonardo DiCaprio as the role Rick Dalton in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's going to be a pretty tough category to win. Up next, we have Director, with the nominees as Robert Egress from The Lighthouse, Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Todd Phillips for The Joker, and Martin Scorsese, The Irishman.
And the final category for this year's BROSCAR nominations is Best Picture. Your nominees are Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Ford v Ferrari, 1917, and Joker.
That's going to be a tough one too. I'm kind of on the fence.
So the way this is going to work out this year is very similar to how we did it 2-3 years ago. Is Palpa Kelly is going to have her winner in each category.
The real winner.
And I will have my pick for each category. Some of them will line up with Palpa Kelly and I, some of them will not. But also, you will have your pick as well in the Broquette pick. So each of these nominees have 3 ways to win. So I know they're excited. I know they're like, holy shit, we could get a BROSCAR in some form, either from the Palpa, from Darth V. Daniel, or from the Broquettes. When we put up these BROSCAR nominations on Twitter, at Reasons I'm Broke, you've seen that full thread. There is a poll under each and every single one of those categories. Ran 7 days. Depending on how quickly you listen to this episode, you will see them. You might still have a moment to vote, but otherwise you saw it on Patreon as well in our public post, and I've retweeted it several times on Twitter. Based on those results, there will be Broquette picks for this year's BROSCAR nominations. Again, 3 ways to win for each of these.
So get out there and vote, and make sure you tune in 2 weeks for the BROSCARs.
Another part of the Broquette block is listener questions, and continuing his streak this week is Bobby on Twitter at Cuban Slim.
He asked, quote, with all the hoopla and hype, with Joker receiving 11 noms, the most this year by any film, if it only walks away with 1 or 2 wins, is it a lesser film at that point? Will it be trashed even more? If it wins a ton, will it get its proper recognition? Or will it just suffer regardless because it will be grouped into the comic book corner of film and just not held to the same candle as Oscar-worthy filmmaking, end quote.
It's going to end up being a combination of all of this, all in part from the MCU sheep. They're going to take any and all opportunities to bring this film down because they don't have their Joker film on their end. Marvel does not have that caliber type of movie. Captain America is my favorite movie from the MCU. I would never put that next to the Nolan trilogy or to the Joker film. It just doesn't, they're not on that same level. So I do think that it's going to end up being, I don't think it's any lesser. I think if it wins 0 Oscars, it got nominated for 11 of them. That in itself is a massive achievement. Even if we ignore the $1 billion, all the accolades, all the Golden Globe wins, all of the Golden Lion win, which was huge and prestigious. Let's assume that all of that never happened. It got nominated for 11 fucking categories. A Joker movie. That on its own is insane. But yes, to answer his question, I think it's going to be a combination of all of these, no matter the level of success it receives.
I agree with that from the Marvel point of view, right? But now let's flip it over and let's look at the rest of the world, the rest of filmmaking. And I definitely think even if it only walks away with one, this is a rated R comic book movie that walked away with an Oscar. 11 nominations and 1 Oscar. Like, how fantastic is that? How much has it already and will continue to open people's eyes to what we can do with these films, what we can do with these characters, what you can do on a tiny ass budget with the right team, with the right directing, with the right storytelling and the right actors. I think that it's already done way more than any of us ever expected. And whether it wins 1 or 11, for me personally, does not change how great and impactful this movie was for so many things. But I do hope that it wins 11.
And more importantly, we're asking the wrong question. How many BROSCARs is it going to win? That's the right question. Is it going to take Best Picture? Is it going to take supporting anything? Those are the real things to tune in for.
I think I already have your answer to that, but
do you? Do you?
I do.
No, I don't think you do.
I think I do.
I don't think you do.
I really think. Are we going to place a bet on that?
On what my Best Picture?
Yeah.
Best Picture pick is going to be? You think it's going to be the Joker?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to place any bets.
Because I already know what your Best Picture pick is.
Because I've said it on the podcast for
so
weeks.
many times.
Thank you, Bobby, for your question. Final part of the BroCat block is you got to play a little bit of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. I got to play as much as the quiz portion. So the way this game works is you take a quiz and ask questions about whether you're going to go into a haunted house, if you take a friend, do you get irritated when people don't show up on time? It's kind of like a personality quiz in a way. They do it with the Harry Potter houses, the Patronuses, and in this case, which Pokemon you're going to be. Now I'm second guessing Scott's dismay at his result because his favorite starter is Squirtle. His result gave him a Charmander, and he's like, the quiz was wrong. And I'm like, man, that is a pretty skewed quiz. Man, I don't know what I'm going to get now. And I was doubting when you were talking about which quiz you took and which Pokemon you ended up getting. Straight up, questions answered as you did. What Pokemon did you get?
Pikachu.
You got your fucking Pikachu, so
Sure
I'm like,
did.
oh shit, man, you got a Pikachu with all the, and your first try and everything.
First try and everything.
Now, the game does say, if you don't like your pick, you can just pick whatever Pokemon you want.
Right.
But you got assigned the Pikachu. I'm like, all right, I'll do mine. And I did the quiz last night, first turn. I got Bulbasaur, my favorite Pokemon of all time, my favorite starter of all time, with just straight up quiz. This quiz is 100% correct. It is the most accurate of quizzes.
I'm going to fight you on that because I think the quiz is still rigged somehow.
Bullshit. How's it rigged at all?
So, at the end, when it's like, oh, you are really bold and brave and you do all your homework and you eat right, and that, which is already a fucking lie, right? But it's going through all these things. That was the exact same things it says about me and gave me a Pikachu. So that's why I thought you were going to get a Pikachu because it was the exact same message for both of us.
Well, there's several questions here then. How would it ever rig it to know, oh, that's Kelly's favorite Pokemon. It's going to be a Pikachu.
Maybe both.
This is Daniel's favorite.
Maybe both were just random and they happened to be our favorite Pokemon. Stranger things have happened in the world.
No, I'm sure if you look up like an answer sheet, people have probably already figured out a way to, like, if you answer it this way, this is what that Pokemon ends up being. I'm pretty sure that's
all right,
what
I'm going to look it up.
All right,
and maybe it'll
up.
say it's just random.
I, in the meantime, will celebrate, even if it was random, that the game knew to fucking randomize me a fucking Bulbasaur. And it knew to randomize you a Pikachu.
I know. It was
and
pretty great.
I could not be... And then you chose as your partner Bulbasaur.
Yes.
I chose mine as Pikachu. In the official Pokemon Twitter and Instagram and on the marketing material, they keep teaming up Bulbasaur with Pikachu.
It's like they listen to our podcast or something.
It's really weird. And at first I'm like, all right, the product I get, because they got to sell this Bulbasaur somehow. But Bulbasaur's gotten more and more popular over the years. And now in the marketing material, they're having it so that they're wearing each other's scarf colors.
I know, they're so cute.
It's amazing. And I'm like, this is the best time for Bulbasaur and Pikachu fans, I think. Well, for Pikachu, you guys have always been having a great time. It's not like they
Yeah.
ever removed any Pikachu things.
We
in your
forever
world.
had a great time.
But now it's like I'm spoiled as a Bulbasaur fan in all the right ways. And even if they were to release an extra controller, that's how bad Bulbasaur fans had it, where that would be spoiling us. Like, oh shit, here's a controller. And we'd be like, thank you, sir.
You did when they released the controller.
Bought that shit. And now we're getting like good marketing material. We're getting little statuettes and the Funko Pop, of course. I'm having a great time. I'm liking it. That's a good part of the Brocat block. They knew what Pokemon we were.
And it was great. I played it a little bit. I'm still not a huge fan of mystery dungeon games. They're just not for me. Because, and I did like Pokemon Conquest. I dug that out of the bin the other day. I'm like, I gotta play this again. It was such a good game. But I don't like being a Pokemon and running around and attacking things. And they're responding to me as if they're people too. When I'm like, but no, you're like a little animal Pokemon. Like, you shouldn't think this way. I don't know. It was weird. I'm still going to play it a little bit more, like at least finish through the demo. The cool thing about it is if you play the demo and then choose to purchase the game, like you don't have to replay everything that you just did, which I think is a really great feature. But if you have a Switch, check it out.
It is a free demo, and whatever progress you make in that game, if you decide to buy the game later, the full game, which I think comes out in March or May, all of that will transfer over to the title. So it's not like old demos where you'd have to start over from the beginning. All of that counts. So you're good to go. Anything else to wrap up the Brocat block on your end?
We did see 1917 this last week. We talked about it last week that we were going to go see it. Really solid movie. I enjoyed it, even with the old couple sitting 2 seats down that talk the whole time. But really solid war movie. Some really beautiful shots. Again, if you look at the Oscars and the BROSCARs, got nominated for a lot of things. So definitely check it out. It should still be in theaters, I believe.
If it ends up taking home any BROSCARs, we will go into more depth and detail in 2 weeks. Otherwise, I don't have anything else on my end.
No, I'm good.
All right, Brocat Core, thank you so much for tuning in. We may have a bonus start of something in a week or 2. We'll go into detail. If you're on our Patreon page, you are going to get it first. So there's a nice teaser for what may or may not be an ongoing thing in the future. That's why I'm not going into detail, because it depends on my time and how much free time I have. So we'll see how that goes. But it's going to happen. You're going to get something bonus on Patreon, and then everyone else will see it about a month or 2 later. But we'll talk about it here on the podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Reasons I'm Broke.
At Palpa Kelly, that's Kelly spelled with an I.
Thank you so much for tuning in, for sharing the podcast with someone else. I've been Skier Daniel.
And I am Emperor Palpa Kelly.
And Brocat Core. All will be well. Out of all the choices in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, which would have been the shittiest one for you to get? Obviously, mine would be Charmander.
Of course.
I would have fucking destroyed your Switch and bought you a new one.
You could set it on fire. Skitty, probably. Skitty's so fucking stupid. If I had gotten Psyduck, I would have played with him. I would have been like, okay.
It's like Misty, self-fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
What about Machop?
He's weird. I still would have picked Pikachu, but not the worst. Skitty's definitely the worst.
So Skitty is to you what Charmander... Do you have any Pokemon that's like Charmander level to me? You don't hate any Pokemon that bad?
The keys. Yeah.
the little Pokemon keys?
Yeah, the stupid keys.